video is brought to you by Prov 134 Hungry LLC, which was created by a mom who started making hungry t-shirts in 2016 to re-energize her son's hope during a challenging time in his life. These shirts represent the inner tool that we all have to help cure not only our hunger, but the hunger of others. Through the use of our own imagination, creativity, investment of time and resources, and our faith. A simple, "Mom, I'm hungry," expose the realization that while some hunger for physical food, there's so much more to hunger for. If there's anything you desire, whether it be your definition of success, to help others more, to gain added strength, to take a leap of faith, to make an impact, achieve a goal, you will obtain it when the work is done. If you do your part, let me rephrase that. If we do our part, the Lord will do the rest. Proverbs 13:4 reads, "A sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied." So we move forward now asking the question, what are you hungry for? The video you're about to watch is a conversation with Lorraine Edwards, the owner and founder of A Single Mission, answering this very question. Enjoy and stay hungry.
I just invited Lorraine to join. Hey, Lorraine!
Hi, Renee.
How are you?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, girl. This is happening. Right now, Lorraine and I, we are going to have a conversation around the ideology of hungry, right? Being hungry in life. And we're going to talk to Lorraine about her story, about some things that she has done. And I'm also going to tell you a little bit about me. If you guys will see, Lorraine and I are actually both wearing the same t-shirt, which is a shirt and brand that came from my company, which is technically called Prov 134 Hungry, which started way back in 2016, where I started making t-shirts after having an exchange with someone that I love very dearly. It was my son, who found himself a little bit discouraged after finding himself on a job search. He started out very enthusiastically. Things were not quite going the way that he had planned. And I saw that he was beginning to lose his energy for the search. And he turns to me one day and he's like, "Mom, I'm hungry." And mind you, he's talking about physical food, right? But my immediate response is, "No, you're not. If you were hungry, you would get up off of that couch and go and get continue your job search, go get what you need. And you don't have to remain hungry." So that night I went to the gym in my frustration because I want my son to maintain his hope, but I also am like a mom, like most of us, like, what can I do to help or whatever. So anyway, I went to the gym. Long story short, the idea for this shirt came to mind, which is that the shirt, when I'm in the gym, I'm thinking about the fact that the Lord tells us that if there's anything that we want, if we hunger for anything, that we have to do our part. If you don't work, you don't eat. And so I came home, went through the scriptures, found this one, which is Proverbs 134 Hungry, or Proverbs 13:4, which reads, "A sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied." Loved it. And long story short, we have these shirts. We have the H on the front, Proverbs 134, and then we have the actual scripture on the sleeve. And again, I've been selling these shirts since 2016, and they've been doing pretty good. And so now I've officially made them a real thing. So I have them online for sale. And so that is beginning to kind of take off. I want to let people know, number one, that God's word is literally a guide to our life. Almost any and everything that we go through, God speaks about it. He has, some words, some tips to kind of take us in this, in the directions that we need. Which actually takes me to one of the stories of my life that I will share with you guys. And I have shared it on social media before, is that at one point in my life, I remember saying, like looking at my life, and I'm just like, oh, I've been through so much, so many hard times and hardships, whatever. And I remember one day saying, Lord, I'm not going to ask you why me. Right? I didn't say, Lord, why me? I said, Lord, I'm not going to ask. And so he kind of just found it within himself to respond to me anyway. And he says, it's not about you. I was like, excuse me. Okay. But it was cool that he said that, because it was just mind opening to the fact that, you know, all of the challenges that I went through in my life, and I'm not really going to call them out right now. They're not for me. They are to be used to help others, to put me in a position to help others. Right. When I encounter someone who has experienced something similar and they think that that is the end, you know, the end all be all, I have the experience. I have an experience, not the experience. I have an experience that I can share. The tears were unexpected, but you know, I'm a crybaby too, so.
I'm not sure why they were unexpected, but okay.
So anyway, so like I said, with the Hungry Brand, there are just so many thoughts behind it, but it's a seedling of an operation. You know what I mean? Like right now, again, it was just selling t-shirts, letting people know the story behind it, and hoping that it was encouraging to people. But right now that I'm trying to grow it and do something different, the thoughts are brand new, right? And so this is actually my first little sprout. You know, let me talk to my friend and see what her experience was like, because I know that you were living, you know, a particular life, you were in a particular profession, and at some point you were just like, there's something else, right? And that's what I want to talk about with you. Okay. So Lorraine, let's talk about you. All right. Okay. You are at the foundation of this. You are my friend, very, 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 very dear friend, whom I have known for, did we say like 20 plus years?
Almost 22.
Almost 22 years. So I've known, you know, about and seen you through, you know, some of the twists and turns of your life, right? And right now, I believe that you're in a really awesome place, a place that I admire. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. You are the founder and director of an organization called A Single Mission. All right. Anybody wants to learn more about you and your company, they can go to asinglemission.com, where they can learn more about the story behind your and you would think, with this being my first live, my thought would be to make sure my phone was fully charged. Let me get my charger. You are the founder, the director of A Single Mission. I love what you do. So I went to your website and I'm looking at your mission and your vision, your values, and I absolutely love the purpose of it, right? So if you don't mind, can I read your mission?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the mission behind A Single Mission says, or reads this way: A single mission will engage, encourage, and empower single Christian women to overcome the unique fears, stresses, and loneliness of being single in a family-centered society by providing Bible-based life and relationship coaching, seminars, online education, and creating a supportive, like-minded community to help them identify and live their God-given purpose. I absolutely love that. And it just gets better. So while I go get my charger though, do you have your website up?
I do now.
Do you mind read your purpose? Because I absolutely love it. I love what you do.
Read the purpose. Okay. A Single Mission exists to help women who are stuck in a life that is spent seeking or waiting for marriage to refocus on identifying and living their purpose now so the world is not missing out on their gifts, to help them grow and develop in their spirituality, health, finances, sexuality, profession, education, entrepreneurship, loneliness, relationships, mindset, emotional and mental health, and all other aspects of life so that they are whole by themselves and better prepared to marry when and if God brings them a husband.
The lives that we are living are not about us.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Hold on
Right.
1 second.
God has a purpose for our lives. And many people live and die and never really discover that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But you haven't asked me a question yet, but I'll just jump in here with saying that for a good portion of my life, I was in that cycle of, I was living and I was going to school and working and all of that, but there was still always this thing of everywhere I went, oh, am I going to meet him? Am I going to meet him? Am I going to, like, everywhere, every church I went to, every meeting I went to, it was always this thing in the back of my mind. And I realized, and there's more to this story, obviously, and you'll probably ask me around that, but when I turned 40, it was just like a major meltdown and a major breakthrough. It's kind of like a breakdown to breakthrough.
Right. I get it.
That I couldn't believe that I was not married and I didn't have any children and I was 40 years old. Like, never in a million years would I have imagined that that's how my life would have gone.
Right.
And so figuring out that there was more, that I could actually enjoy life, I could do more things, because I had always kind of lived a little bit small, because you don't want to do too much because this whole idea of men being intimidated and blah, blah, blah. So you subconsciously kind of withhold yourself a little bit from what maybe God has intended for you to do. And I stopped doing that. And I started kind of stepping out of that mindset and that mold and figuring out what I wanted to do. Right. And it started to, and through, process, I came to this ministry of ministering to other single women in an unexpected way. I'll say that.
Okay. And we're going to pause right there. Because we will get right back into that. What were you doing before you decided to officially get into a single mission? What's your profession? What were you doing? What was life like?
So I have a master's in social work, and I was the director of social services at the Salvation Army on the Metro Richmond area. I had been working there for 8 years. I'd been the director for 6 years, and it was a great job, a great ministry. The Salvation Army is a ministry, right? And so working there, I didn't really do a lot of direct care because I was the director, but it's a small organization, so we all help where we are. So that's what I was doing. I was kind of living in the dream of what I had gone to school for and paid a lot of money to get an education to do. I was doing that. But it always kind of known that being a missionary was on my to-do list. Like, that's something that I felt like God had called me to do, but it wasn't then. It was at some point. In 2018, that point came. Like, I knew it was time. And so I submitted my resignation, and I didn't leave until 2019. But during 2019, I had applied to become a missionary, and I ended up spending 2020 in New Zealand as a missionary.
So go ahead.
Prior to that, I had done some singles retreats and seminars and spoken there and all of that. I forget that part, but just immediately I was, and I really liked doing that. But while I was in New Zealand, an opportunity came to kind of join an online education company, and that's really where the official A Single Mission started, where the name, where I came with the name, and kind of started to really focus on what the purpose of it was going to be.
Okay. So just a step before a single mission, when you say that you wanted to be a missionary, right? You're already working a job that is, like you said, it's a ministry in itself. You know what I mean? It's awesome, serves a lot of wonderful people, serves the community in a wonderful way. But when you say that you want to be a missionary, what is it about that drew you to that ideology? Right.
And so that was my focus at that time.
So I think you started to answer one of my questions, which is, tell me about that pivotal moment. You know what I mean? Where you're living your life, on this road, going in this direction. And then at some point, just because, again, my brand is called Hungry, there was a moment where you became hungry for something more, something different or whatever. Like, what exactly was that pivotal moment? Again, I felt like you kind of answered it already, but if you have a, different answer, feel free to share that.
Let me share that in just kind of like a two-phase kind of answer. So in 2013 or 2012, I think the fall of 2012, I was at a singles retreat, just as a person going to a singles retreat.
Right.
And I went with a friend of mine, and it was good and all of that. And my friend has an unusual level of confidence in me. And at the end of this weekend, it was for a whole weekend. At the end of the weekend, she tells the director of the singles ministry that he should ask me to speak at the next one. Okay. Like, out of the blue, we didn't discuss this. We didn't, I wasn't like, oh yeah, I think I could. No, I'd never done anything like that before. Right. And it's not just one, it's like 6 presentations you have to do over the course of a weekend.
Right.
For, this group of people. At the time, it was probably 50, 60, 70 people.
Right.
I'm looking at her like she's like got 2 heads. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean? Right. And then he asked me to do it, like right then. No, he didn't ask any qualifications or anything. And I for some reason I said yes, because I can't, it's hard for me to say no to spiritual things.
Right.
Or things that I feel like God is saying is putting you in the path for, even though I was totally petrified, because I'm just like, I have maybe 6 months to put together 6 whole presentations for this group that's going to be relevant and engaging and interesting and helpful and all of those things that you want and that I've often not gotten when I've gone to singles retreat. So that was the one advantage that I did have. I knew what not to do. Right. But I didn't know what to do.
Right. Okay.
But miraculously, and I do believe it was a miracle, I sat down to start to do this and God just poured into me like things I had never even thought of.
Right. It's
not like these were seeds in my mind and I'm like, oh, let me flesh that out. Like scriptures that I saw completely differently. It was incredible. So I went, and it was a success in the sense of people really were engaged with that. They loved it. They thought it was relevant. People were trying to talk to me. There was like a line of people trying to talk to me after each, session. And so I felt really excited about that.
And rightly so. No, please let me jump in and just say, I went to these and they were amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I can definitely understand why folks are lining up to, to kind of speak to you, to talk to you, to want to ask you more questions, because they were jam-packed full of wisdom, knowledge. They were Bible-based, because there's nothing more annoying than people trying to give you life advice and it's strictly on their opinion. It's like, if you don't go sit down somewhere, you know what I mean? But it was good. It was good, sound, like I said, Bible-based advice. Like, you literally are not just drawing things out of nowhere. You know what I mean? You got great resources to support everything that you are saying. And those seminars were dynamic.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for me, that's important. You can give people good information, but if you don't give it in a way that engages them and keeps them interested and excites them, and that is really important to the place where they are, then it doesn't matter all the good information that you give, because that's gonna drop out of their head.
Oh, let me also add that you check those boxes too, because there was humor and it was extremely engaging. You checked that box.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
absolutely.
that. Good to have a witness, and I'm not just saying this on my own.
I'm a witness.
So that kind of lit a spark in me, because then someone asked me to speak at another one, and then it was another one and another one. And I did several of these. I mean, I went to Tennessee, I went to Georgia, someone invited me to Mississippi, but something happened and we had to cancel that. They had to cancel it. But that just kind of lit a fire. Okay, so fast forward to 2018. We were going through some things at the Salvation Army, and there had been many times when I was just like, okay, I'm tired of this, I'm leaving. But I always knew that it wasn't the right time. But then something happened, and I'm not going to go into what happened. And I wasn't mad. I just knew. Like, I want to be able to tell you, like, this major thing happened and but like, this thing happened and it was resolved. But in my spirit, I just knew, I'm like, it's time, Lord, isn't it? And I left work that day. It was a Tuesday. I left work and I said, Lord, if it's time, I need to know the plan. I didn't need to know the plan all the way till forever, but I needed to know what I needed to do. And my job is probably, or the office where I worked then, was probably, I would say, 7 to 9 minutes from the highway that I take to the interstate that I took to get home. And by the time I got to the interstate, I wasn't even on it yet. I was just on the ramp. God had given me the plan of what I needed to do for the next year or so.
Oh, wow.
To make this missionary thing happen. And I was just like, whoa, this is it. I went to work on Wednesday. I told 2 of my friends, I said, I'm resigning. And they were like, what? And we're all on the same level. And it wasn't like my staff or whatever, because that's not kind of how you tell your staff that you're resigning. But these were like, my friends, and they were like, and then I said, I just am, it's time. I wrote the letter and I turned it in on that Thursday. And, the people were shocked or like, what? And they thought it was because of this thing. And that thing was a catalyst, but it wasn't the reason. Sometimes you just need that little thing to push you where you wouldn't. Because, I mean, it was a good job. I was paid well. I had a nice house. I had those things that we say and I'm like, going to be a missionary, this is not something you get paid for generally, or not a lot. So I was going to give up all of that. And it was just like, okay, but I was so sure. And not once, Renee, because of a series of events, even though I resigned, I gave my resignation it was like the summer of 2018. But I wanted to, because of the nature of my job, I wanted to give them time to find a replacement. So I had pushed it off for 3 months, and then, something happened with that person we selected. So I pushed it off, and I didn't end up leaving till February 2019, but not one time did I look back. I did not have doubt. I did not have a fear. I did nothing. And to this day, I have never regretted that. And I do not, and I have not made anywhere near the amount of money that I made when I was working there, but I have not feared at all. I have not looked back at all because of that hunger. Like, I knew there was something more.
Right.
And, when you are hungry and someone else feeds you, they feed you what they want to feed you.
Right.
Or what they have. But when you're hungry and you feed yourself, you eat whatever you want. And so what I mean by that is, now that I'm working for God and this mission, how hard I work or how high I go, there is no limit. My mind, my hunger, my commitment is the only barrier to me getting wherever it is that I want to go. And if I was eating hamburger at the Salvation Army, I can eat filet mignon. I don't eat either one of those things. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you feed yourself, then you decide. And so when you talked about at the beginning, why you started this, it's like, are you really hungry? Because when you're just a little bit hungry, you might have like some peanut butter crackers or some chips or something. But when you're hungry, you want a meal. And so you're going to do whatever it takes to prepare that meal. That's physically as well as emotionally, spiritually. You are going to seek out what feeds your soul, what feeds your passion, what feeds your purpose.
Right.
And I've had some rough days. It is not easy trying to be an entrepreneur, and I don't really have any, like, in my family there aren't any, like, I'm not getting something passed down to me. I'm just doing this brand new. But and there've been some hard days and issues and frustrations, but I don't have any interest in going back. Like, this, what God has put in my heart, this will come to fruition.
It will come to fruition, and that's what will last. That's awesome. So you answered quite a few of my questions, right? Because when it comes to being hungry and making these changes or whatever, some people are in their jobs, and I have been one of those people. I'm working my job, and my job tells me how much money I make. And when it tells, just like you were just saying, and when it tells me how much money I make, that tells me how much house I can get, how much car I can get, how much freedom I have outside of work. You know what I mean? So again, we're just like, when we're talking about making these changes, what exactly are you hungry for? Are you hungry for the autonomy and independence? Are you hungry for money? Are you hungry for service? In this case, you're hungry for service for the Lord. You know what I mean? And you are trusting, and I hear your faith, knowing that he's going to take care of you, that his word is true. And
he is doing something in me now. Go ahead.
Right. And for me to hear you say that, it speaks to your journey, because even when you go through your story on your page, you talk about going from depression to the mission. So where you are now is not where you have always been.
No.
Not at all.
Absolutely not.
Not at all. So again, you kind of come at, because you're using your life's experiences, and this is a big part of our lives, having that partnership, somebody to talk to and all that. It's wonderful to have, your family, your friends, your coworkers and all of that, but that's a piece that just adds a little something extra. And especially with us being single, we see it, a little bit shinier, maybe than those who are actually in it. You know what I mean? Not to say that it's not a wonderful thing, but once you get in and you see the realities of marriage, that also takes work. So that's a whole nother mission in itself or whatever, but it looks just a little more glam and beautiful on the outside, as far as like what we are desiring.
And we've also experienced a taste in our previous relationships of what it's like to share your life. And I mean,
Right.
even when you break up with someone doesn't mean it was all bad, you know?
Right.
And so you take those little bits of goodness and you understand. And besides the fact, you know, we know that marriage is from God, and anything that's from God is good. So
Right.
even though sin, we look at the world, God created the world perfect, but sin came in, and there's certainly destruction around it, but we still can see beauty in the world. To me, that's the same in marriage. It's like, yeah, it's hard, it's different than it would have been if we were still sinless,
Right.
but God intended it to be good, and it still can be.
So if there was something I was going to say before you said that, I forgot. But again, a single mission, this is a major, you know, this is a part of your life or whatever that you have decided to use, you know, we'll say for God's glory. Or I'm tempted to say I don't want to try to talk and sound all churchy or anything like that, but I mean that's really what it is.
Yeah,
it's for
God's
glory.
I want women, and I mean, of course, you know, men can benefit from it too. I mean, there were certainly men at the seminars that I went to. A lot of men who talked to me after. So I'm not suggesting that. It's just that I have a different perspective as a woman, and so my primary target audience is women. But if a guy wants to talk to me, I'm not going to be like, no, I'm not, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention the fact you are a woman, so that's the side that you're seeing it all from.
Exactly. But I think that this is very important, and our church does a terrible job of addressing issues of singles. And so if you spend your life obsessed with either a specific person or just the concept of being with someone, you miss the whole thing that God has put in front of you to do, to live, to experience, to enjoy. And then how are you then able to be an example or a witness to other people when there's this, I mean, people like, we get depressed, anxious, bitter. All of these things are not characteristics of God. And so when we don't address this, when we don't have someone say, you know what, like, I want to be married too. But if that doesn't happen, God loves me, and I know God has good for me, and he has that for you too. Let's figure out what that is. Because a lot of times when we don't have the marriage, but then we also don't have the purpose, and we also don't have the passion, and we also don't have positive relationships, then we are a whole package of a mess. But when we find the thing that lights our fire, it doesn't mean, I still have moments when I'm just like, God, for real. In fact, I just had one yesterday because something happened, and I was just like, I mean, for real? Like, how is that person, you know, getting to be married times 2, and now, like, I'm still, you know, so I still have those moments. Right. This is not suggesting that you just like are so like holy and whatever that you don't experience that loneliness. But I don't stay in those places very long. It's just like, okay, God, let's move on. And, you know, you go back. And so helping women find that so that they can then actually do the will of God in their lives right now.
I actually think you spoke on that in the particular blog that I was talking about. You were just talking about like kind of taking control of your mind, your thoughts. And let me see here. Again, you've answered so many of my questions.
Oh, good.
And I really do appreciate that, because again, you know, your story is, you know, unique to you. You know, there may be others who have, you know, kind of lived a similar story. And there are some who don't quite know what's going on with their story, you know, and yours might, you know, kind of shed some light to help them to kind of navigate their next step. So again, in the information that you've shared, you've kind of stated some of the things that you did, some of the things that happened in your process. Can you, again, and forgive me if this is redundant, can you tell me like what were some of the strategies that you have or had, or some of the processes that you feel like were helpful to you, but also would be helpful to somebody else as they are in this moment of maybe knowing or awareness of the fact that they want something different. They are hungry. There's something in them that is wanting either something more or wanting something different. Because for me, my hunger initially Renee's is for change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I've been walking back and forth in the same groove for so long, it's just like, you know, I'm super comfortable here, and I don't really want to go too deep into it, but I needed change. I needed to get out of this. And here we are today with the seedling of this whole Hungry brand and all of that. But again, just tell me like what some of the strategies are that were useful or helpful for you that might be helpful for somebody else.
So I would say one of my theme verses is Psalm 84:11, I believe. The Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will he withhold from those who walk uprightly. And I'd heard that verse, you know, before and whatever, but I don't even remember exactly when this happened, but I feel like it was in that 2013 time when the seminars started. Is that, do I really believe in God? Not his existence.
Okay.
But his actual love, his presence in my life, his attention to me, and not just the world in general. Like, do I really believe that God loves me? And when I started to like really process that and think, I do believe that. I don't know if I believe it as much as I should, but I do believe that. And then I encountered this verse in that new way.
Tell me what it is again. Psalm what?
Psalm 84:11.
Okay.
I mean, like it says, no good thing will he withhold from those who walk uprightly. And I'm just like, I'm not here to say, oh yeah, you're perfect, you're doing, like, that's not the point. The point is that I know that I have a heart for God. Right. And that I want to and have tried to live the way that he wants me to live. So where I fall short, he knows, and we work on that. But it's not a rebellious spirit at all. So I'm just like, so if God is withholding something, even something that I think is good, marriage is good for me. Like I want that. It's good for me, Lord. You created it. Blah, 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 blah. And then it says no good thing. I started to rethink that thing like, okay, so just because something is good, even if it's from God, doesn't mean it's good for you then. And you don't necessarily get to know why it's not good for you then. But if you believe that God is seriously looking down on Lorraine, he cares about Lorraine specifically, and he's like, no, we're not going to do that right now. I had to rethink God. I had to rethink my relationship and like his actual care for me. And that changed everything, Renee. It changed everything. And when I start to get that feeling of a little bit of resentment or a little bit of why is this happening, no good thing will he withhold from them who walk uprightly. And so that was the first thing that started to change my perspective. And then once I had that, I was just like, I want other people to understand that too. Because we make so many poor decisions about relationships because we want it so bad.
Right.
That we ignore things that we shouldn't ignore. We don't deal with our own stuff. There's a whole host of things that go along with the mindset of, I just want to be married. I just want. And so many other things that are negative flow from that. Right. And so when I did that first seminar, and I was just like, people are hungry for that, and people need that. And the questions that people were asking me, that then moved me into that, like that fire. And then it was like, knowing like that wouldn't go away. Like I just, even when it kind of tapered out and I wasn't doing it as much and just life was happening, I still wanted that. And I was still, and people, my whole life, people have been asking me about relationships. I mean, like when I was a kid, people were asking me about relationships because I was always reading one of my favorite books, The Adventist Home, messages to young people, child guidance. I was always reading stuff like that. Even when I was like 9 and 10 years old, I started. So I feel like God had put this ministry in my heart even back then, but I didn't know it.
Right.
He was preparing me for that. And I really just realized that and discovered that last year. And so people were asking me, and I was seeing so many women, particularly, falling into, making bad marital decisions, like actually marrying people that they shouldn't, or dating people that they shouldn't, or whatever, because of that desire to be with someone. And
gotcha.
So that was so just like paying attention to people.
Okay, right.
Like paying attention to God, and like, does he really love me? Paying attention to myself and my own walk and my experience in relationships and what, decisions I had made, good and bad. And then paying attention to other people and seeing the need for that.
Right.
And then realizing that I may not be able to change the world, but I can change people in my world. But not if I stayed quiet. Not if I just was like, well, I want to do this, but maybe I should wait if people ask me. No. Creating a single mission was exciting, but it was scary.
Wait. Don't you dare speak on that, because I had a question about that. Okay. So. Okay, because we have a couple people in the room, right, who are listening. Can I ask you guys to participate? Can you guys tell me what you are hungry for? Like, give me one word or two. What is something that stirs up a hunger in you? Lorraine, are you able to see comments on your end too?
I am.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I can.
Okay. Anybody? What are you hungry for? Like, I have a long list of different things that I have thought about, over the course of your life. There are times where you just want something, right? At some moments in your life, yes, there you go, peace. That was top of my list. Ebony, hey, yeah, you hunger for peace. Some people hunger for success. They hunger for their definition of a future, right? They hunger for restoration, for ministry, for growth. Anybody who's in the room, if you guys are still in here, feel free to share. So I definitely like the peace. Some people hunger for love, for self, for salvation, for joy, accomplishment. Contentment. Yes, Dorothea, that's a big one. Contentment, and again, just like you just shared some strategies for you, we need strategies for each of these things, for each of these moments in our life where we're just like, you know what, I want something different. The different thing is the freedom from whatever, restoration, most definitely. We want new experiences. I've been doing this for so long. I'm hungering for something more. And so we have to create these our strategies. We have to put a plan in place, right? And that's something that you said. But the beautiful thing about what you said was that you wanted the Lord to give you a plan. You asked him, and he responded to that, and that's a real thing as well. I'm not sure how much time we have. I don't know if we just have an hour, and I know I'm looking at the clock. Technically, in an hour we have like 7 minutes. So I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. I also think that maybe Instagram removed the time limits. I'm not sure. We'll find out. If we get cut off and you want to continue, because I know we have to do like an official ending, we might cut out and come right back just to sum it all up.
That's cool.
So the strategies. So with that, I do want to share one story. When I was at VCU, I had been put out on academic probation. And I was just like, look, you know, I messed up, but I got to get this right. And so I had to, my counselor, this is kind of embarrassing, but not, my counselor was just like, they're not going to let you back in. You're kind of wasting your time or whatever. And I was just like, no, I am hungry. I am determined that I am going to get back. I want to get this degree. I'm going to get it. And so I went, she told me where to go. I went to the dean's office. I'm sitting in the waiting room. And do you know what happens? Something tells me, write out your class schedule for like the next 4 semesters, right? I mean, you know, we already have our, like the curriculum and how that's supposed to play out, but hello, I deviated from that. So I wrote out all my schedule. I go in and the dean, I make my plea and she's just like, well, what's your plan? I was like, look, I'm glad you I happen to have it right here. It was so amazing. So again, like when you make up your mind and you follow the promptings, you know what I mean? Because again, I could have went in there and sat in there empty-handed, but something said, write it out. And I got back in school. I got back in school, right? So again, just having that plan in place is extremely useful. Do we have anything? Yep. A plan that won't fail. Right. So these are some things that I've heard from you as far as strategy goes, right? Like you said, paying attention to God, you know, putting yourself in a position to hear what he's saying, paying attention to yourself, right? So you can break that down a little bit more if you want to, like, you know, maybe you had a moving or something here and there. I don't know, but go for it.
Or you want to go through that and we'll come back to it.
Okay. Pay attention to God, pay attention to yourself. I heard you say that you were reading, you know what I mean? You're taking in knowledge and information. I heard you say that. You were also going to God's word. You're using his word, believing in his word, right? And just a little more plainly, you're reading the Bible, right? You are also observing what's going on around you, right? So you are seeing, you know, what's going on with the single women, you know, what some of the issues are. You're at that time, you know, maybe if you don't know exactly what you're about to do with your life, you're still receiving information now that you may or may not even know is going to help you in the future, to help you in your ministry. And frankly, for you, I'm going to boldly say that it is undoubtedly a gift that was given to you, right? So over the course of time, he's filling you with this information. So you're seeing the needs of others. And then at some point you are beginning to like realize, you know, the impact of, you know, maybe your thoughts and what you plan to do, and realizing what you are able to do. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you were going to go back to paying attention to self. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So a lot of times, you know, we get this impression that if we ask God what it is that he wants us to do, he's going to send us to the ends of the earth in some pit to, you know, preach the gospel, and we're not going to have toilets and, you know, whatever. Obviously, there are some people who do missions like that. But God has put in us gifts and interests and passions and personalities that tend toward something, you know, and he nurtures that. Just like I said, you know, I was reading these things. No one was telling me to read Adventist Home. I was 10. Like, what did I need to read Adventist Home for? I just loved her writings, you know, and I love everything that she writes. But at that time, I read, there's this Nancy Van Pelt. She does a lot of relationship writings, and she had this 3-set series, like The Complete Courtship, The Complete Marriage, and probably The Complete Parent. And I read those at, you know, 11, 12 years old, because my parents owned it and it was completely on my own. And so God was putting something in me and nurturing something that was part of my personality, that was part of what his plan was for me, but also that then I also always wanted to be a social worker from when I was young. And then and so I was doing like the counseling part and just the interacting with people on an emotional level and trying to help them and people would always come to me. I wasn't going to people say, how can I help you with your relation? People would come to me,
To you.
as a young person,
Mm-hmm.
and ask me questions about relationships and those types of things. And so then you get to, when you pay it, when I said pay attention to yourself, what is it that you enjoy?
Right.
What is it that you're interested, even if you don't know what your passion is, everyone doesn't know that. But what are you interested in? What do you like doing? What piques your interest a little bit that you could even nurture and see, is this something real? So pay attention to those things. And when I, did that first seminar, it was a feeling like I had not felt before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I loved it so much. And I was almost afraid to say how much I loved it, I loved it so much. And not because people were giving me accolades, because people did give me accolades. People were, but it was because when I said amen, there were people who wanted to talk to me, and I loved doing that. I loved helping people with their relationships. I loved talking to people about that stuff. And so I had it opened a door for me that was just, it was like the floodgates opened, and I was just like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And people listened,
Yeah. So what about the part in the preparation where you said, because again, you're a longtime friend, right? So to me, I think that you're brilliant. You're very, very, very smart, right? But even with all of the intellect that you have, you said when you were preparing, there were things coming to you that you know what I mean, that were just kind of coming out of nowhere. Hello, Holy Spirit. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
to feel that, I'm asking, what it felt like to deliver what was delivered to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't. It's hard to put into words, because I literally can see myself. I was sitting on my bed, and I was sitting there, and I'm just like, what am I even gonna talk about?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that he needed the titles before, like early, because they had to put it in the bulletin and just advertise or whatever. So I had to come up with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of coming up with stuff. It's like,
and they were
okay.
good too. Right.
The X in the closet, flags everywhere, like these roll away the stone, like all this stuff started coming to me. But I didn't have like substance to those things. It was just kind of like, and then I was just like, God, I don't even remember if I like literally got on my knee. I'm sure I didn't get on my knees and pray, but it was just like, okay, God, I'm like, I need to do this. And it was just like, it's literally like, I've never experienced this before, I don't think, but it's like he opened up my brain and just like poured all this stuff in there.
Right.
And it was just like, and I just like wrote.
That is so
I feel
awesome.
like I almost wrote them all on the same day. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's how it went, but I remember just like writing and writing and writing, and it was just like, whoa. And so when I was able to share that, and when God gives you something, people are going to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wouldn't give it to you if he didn't mean for them to hear it and they didn't want to hear it.
Right.
But when you actually present it and people are just like, and not just, and it's funny, it's not just the people who don't know you, because several of my friends came to that. First of all, the one who got me into it in the first place, she was there. Mm-hmm. But several other people when they knew they came. And so now you're talking in front of your friends and mm-hmm. in a way that they've never experienced. And it's funny. One of my friends, he was like, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't know that it was going to be that good. I just was like coming to support and whatever. He's like, this was after the first night. He mm-hmm. was like, it was magnificent.
Mm-hmm. So
he ended up meeting his wife there, actually.
That is so funny. But I will say, I am your friend, and I mm-hmm. knew it was going to be good. I just didn't know it was going to be as dynamic as it was. You know what I mean? but
Well, thank
you
you.
never under deliver. You always
Thank
come
you.
correct. We can anytime, and anybody, again, if you guys are in the room and you've ever heard her speak, you can attest to the fact that she does not under deliver. Matter of fact, you always over deliver, which is fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that.
Which is fantastic. So
I
yeah.
appreciate that. And you know what was so great about that particular time too, that first time, is that because of the titles that God gave me and they promoted that, a lot of younger women came, a lot of younger people came that normally wouldn't come, because this was, it tended to be the older kind of like the 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s. At this retreat, I had been a couple of times prior, right. But it was more people than had been there in years, and it was a lot of young people that came. And so after the sessions, and they would have me like in the circle, like asking me all these questions, that was so awesome. Because of course you want to help anybody, but to be able to get to the young people, the young women early, before they make some of the mistakes that we've made or some others have made, that was just like I felt so like I feel hyped now just thinking about it. And it was like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago.
So let me say this, and you are hyped, and rightly so, right? Because I can imagine that's absolutely amazing. But just now, this is my very first time thinking this thought, is that, again, in the very beginning, I told you, I told the Lord, I'm not going to ask you why me, but he decided to respond anyway and was like, girl, it's not about you. And basically, like in the Bible where it says that the older, women, I don't know if it specifically says the wives, but you're supposed to help, the young women, right? Help lead and guide them. And what I'm hearing from you right now, it's my first time thinking this, is that you're not married. You're not married, but you are still fulfilling that duty.
Yeah,
you are that's awesome.
And it's so important that you have, like, when I was that age, and when I was saying they were younger, most of them were just like maybe in their late 20s, early 30s. I was in my 40s at the time that I was in my 40s when I started doing this. And even that age gap is, it may not seem that large on some level, but it is, because you have so much more different experiences. Right. And you think so much differently when you're in your 40s than when you're in your 30s and 20s. Right. But to be able to, I didn't have anyone that I could talk to about these things when I was their age or younger, and I try to be very, like, we talk about sex, we have a whole seminar on sex, and I try to be very engaging, but also straightforward, you know?
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to ask those questions. You want to feel safe. And I felt like I know they felt safe because they talked to me afterward too, not just in the sessions. Having those conversations and, planting seeds. You can't make anybody do anything, but you can plant the seeds of healthy self-worth and healthy relationship selections and healthy, and you can plant the seeds for all of these things, and pray that those seeds take root and that they're nurtured, and that we have a different generation around relationships, even in the church, than maybe we've had in the past, because of course there are a lot of good marriages and whatever, but we even within the church there are a lot of very unhealthy marriages because conversations weren't had, books weren't read, things didn't happen that needed to happen.
Yeah, don't get me started with that. You know how I feel about that. Now I'm going to share a little bit about how I feel about that.
Okay.
This is why what you do is so important, right? Because historically, from my experience in the church, when they have the marriage seminars and the singles ministry seminars, typically it's like the same weekend, right? Same time that they're doing it. And then they separate us and they say, married people, you go over here. and you guys go and they'll, you know, give you some advice, and then you guys maybe talk about some of the issues, and then they tell you how to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not just problem solve, but what do you call it when you're like fixing all the problems? What's the word I'm looking for? Damage control.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's damage control. And then when we go into the singles ministry, it's always the same thing. Well, we just want you to know there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm just like, where's the door? Get me out of here. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like, I knew this already. You know what I mean? I know that I am fine. You know what I mean? And then I was the rebellious one who would slip into the marriage seminars and sit in the back. And my thoughts were that I want to be married one day. And in order for me to, you know, get any type of or any level of preparation, I need to know some real things about marriage. I don't need a self-esteem boost. Like, I'm kind of good. You know what I mean? Because single doesn't mean depressed and in despair.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? No, I'm good. I'm living my life. I'm in school playing tennis, salsa dancing, doing creative things or whatever. I'm good in that regard. You know what I mean? But again, even as a single person, I know that while I'm single, I want to begin to prepare myself and be in a more ready state when I get married. In order to do that, I'm going to slip in and I'm going to listen to what you guys are talking about. I'm going to slip in and listen to the advice that you guys are receiving, because instead of me going in getting damage control, I am getting that pre-preparation.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? To give me some sort of heads up when I actually get in there. Not to say that I'm going to get in and be perfect with it, but again, it's not going to be quite so foreign to me.
Right. Oh, absolutely. You know, and it's interesting that you say that, because I've actually done this same friend who was like, I didn't think it was going to be that good and whatever. Well, him and his wife are now family life directors, and they invited me to speak at their church, you know, and he wanted me to speak to everybody. And I said, okay, now, are you sure you want me to do that? Because married people can get a little, weird when a single person talks to them about anything. And he was just like, I'm comfortable with you doing it. If you're comfortable. I said, well, I'm comfortable because I know that I'm not talking about what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what God's talking about. And he knows about every situation. So I can talk to anybody about this because God is the one who's given me that. And when I did speak about that, I talked about marriage and parenting and single. And I had people from all of those groups who came up to me afterward. And, one woman in particular, she was just like, she's like, I'm going to tell you, because I did a little parable. I won't go into that, but just kind of saying, just give me a chance before you dismiss the fact that this single girl might be able to give you something. She's like, I did come in with the attitude. Her and her husband came. She's like, I did come in with like, what is this single girl going to tell me about being married? And she was just like, you were fantastic. Like, I learned so much. And her husband was like, he had decided whether he was going to go to church or come to the seminar. And he was like, I decided to come to the seminar. And he's like, and I'm so like, I know that God brought me here to be here for this. And so when you say what God wants you to say, you can say it to whoever and they can grow from it. But I do know that my primary target are single women, because first of all, the church absolutely is terrible at ministering to single people. If I go to one more seminar and somebody tells me to pray, like, I pray all the time. That ain't helped me get married, and it's not keeping me from wanting to be married. So what do you want me to pray about? You know what I'm saying? And I just think there's a lot of ignorance around that, because a lot of the times the people who are talking to singles are people who've never actually been single. When you get married at 21 or 22, you've never been single. Because to me, you're not single when you're in high school. Like, you're just a teenager, you know? Until you get out of college, you're not single. And so if you're married, you don't have any concept. If you married before you were 30, I would say, you don't really understand living as a single person. Because that's a whole different deal than being single for a few months, you broke up and now you meet somebody. No.
Right.
Living a godly Christian life as a single person is more than just sexual stuff.
Right.
It's a whole lot of stuff. And I think that's the blessing of what God gave me in that seminar, or those seminars, is he gave me it's like what I was hungry for when I went to a seminar. And I didn't realize, I knew I wanted more, but I couldn't say, well, I want you to talk about this, 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 and this. But God was like, we need to talk about this, 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 and this.
Right.
And I was just like, yes, God. And everyone else was like, yes, that's how my life is lived. That's what I need to live my life. And so when we approach, especially younger people, and we're talking about this stuff, we have to have a holistic. God is holistic. He deals with us. You said this earlier. God has an answer to all of the problems that we have. But we don't go to him for that.
Right.
And so when we start to go to him and we start to form, these answers, then people are like, young people, old people, married people, single people, all of these people are like, okay, I get that. Tell me more.
Right.
And I believe that's the truth of the gospel too. When we teach the gospel the way that God means it for us to teach it, people are like, tell me more. But when we teach it in our way, then people are like, yeah, I'm good.
So let me read this comment really quick, right? This is from our dear friend Dorothea, who says, Lorraine, you have a male counterpart, a man committed to leading young single men in the same manner as you with single women. Okay.
Yeah, I'm hoping that'll be my husband.
Okay. Speaking. Okay.
I don't know of any right now, but I'm sure there are. But we just have to be promoted more, like Renee is doing right now, and hopefully we'll have more opportunities.
Yeah. So this conversation has been great. This conversation has been absolutely great. And again, the purpose of this conversation today was just to talk about, right now, speaking with you, was about your hunger for something different, right? Something new, a hunger for, not even in your case, really, you weren't even hungry for something new. You're hungry for something that's been in you for such a long time, right? And I'm actually glad that came up, because that's what I was thinking about. Like, I was thinking about, because I have a whole list of people that I want to interview about their hunger for whatever it is that has taken their life in this particular direction right now, right? But as I was, kind of thinking about these people and thinking about this whole concept, I was just like, everybody didn't necessarily have a point in their life where they were miserable or tired of this, or just ready for something here to go in a different direction. You know what I mean? The hunger could have been following them all throughout the course of their life. And now it's just the time to go ahead on and, do this thing or whatever. And I believe that that's the case, with you. So again, the conversation has been absolutely wonderful. Lord, hold on one second. Well, anyway, we're fine. So this is my last question. Okay. And again, almost all the questions, you've kind of answered them already, right? My last question is, when you decided to move into the area, in which you were hungry, would you say that you made these moves fearlessly or fearfully? Thank you.
I would say fearlessly. And, I feel, and I guess I shouldn't feel this, but it feels a little weird to say that. Almost like I should say fearfully, because it was such a huge thing to say, well, I'm not going to go back to a job. I'm not going to, once I, was finished in New Zealand, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue this. And, but I can't honestly say fearfully. because I believe that this is what God has put me here to do. And I'm going to say something even more than that, Renee. I'm going to say I believe that that's the reason that God didn't allow me to get married. And that's good. And I don't know if that means that I will never be married. You know, I obviously I can't know that. But I've thought about the fact that if not that I couldn't study or whatever, but if I had gotten married when I wanted to get married, like in my 20s, when I would be just like so many other people who are married and come and speak at single. I mean, I still have my personality or whatever, but a whole lot changes about you when you're married or whatever. Like I would be just like them, talking about stuff that I really hadn't experienced. And the thing, I think the most, other than the fact that I believe I'm speaking what God has, and I don't believe it, I know I'm speaking what God has said. The second thing that makes my presentations so powerful is that I lived it. Right. And that I am living it. Right. And so if I had not been living it, I could be saying a lot of the same things and it would fall on deaf ears, because they would be like, you don't know, you don't really know how it feels. You're saying the right things, but you don't know how it feels. Right. So I'm thinking that, you know, had you gotten married, you know, still trying to talk to single people, the moment you get married and you shift, you're no longer developing as a single person. You know what I mean? You've just started your development as a married person. Right. Yeah. Now I feel like I've done it long enough to have credibility. So God, you don't need, I don't need to keep on learning. If you know, we can go on to the next phase if you want to. Right. But if I, you know, 20, 25, whatever, I'm married, you know what, and so I've thought about this a lot. And just when I really had to think about, and it was a situation that came up that made me think about, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And I went back, and God took me back, because I wasn't thinking about that. He took me back to sitting on our living room floor, reading Adventist Home at 9 and 10 years old, reading The Complete Courtship at 10. Like, what? I didn't even, what is courtship? I mean, 10 o'clock. Right. I mean, 10-year-olds even know what courtship is. Right. And he led me the path, and he showed me the path. And Renee, never before in my life had I believed that God had been preparing me for anything special. Like, I knew he was with me and he loved me or whatever, but you know, you hear people who are just like, I've always wanted to do this, and you know, my whole life, and they're, you know, and you're like, that's great for them, but I've never felt that. Until this situation came up in 2020. I was in New Zealand and I was talking to someone, and God showed me the path he had led me on. And he was just like, if you weren't single now, if you hadn't been through this, how effective what could you do with a single mission? You would be a married mission talking to single people. Like, that don't even make sense. Right. But yeah, good question. Ebony says, have you ever experienced good single counsel from a married person? I mean, counsel that was totally on point. And let me answer that. No, I have not. But I mean, but the thing, like, I mean, I have from Ebony and Tracy. No, I think I have from Dr. Ashford. Go ahead. Oh yeah, no, they're married. Okay, right. So I was just like, what about me, Renee? Not you, because you're not married. But again, the fact that, you know, you're still single now, not to put all your business in the street, but again, you know, you're single in your 20s. Now you can speak to that. Going back to the whole Lord, the Lord saying, your life is not about you. Your experiences are not about you, right? So
you pass through your 20s. Now I can speak to what it's like to be single in your 20s. I passed through my 30s. I can speak to the 30s. I passed through the 40s. I can speak to the 40s. You know what I mean? So it's a you know, a journey unique to you that allows you to speak to that.
I will say, let me just answer Ebony's question.
Yep.
I had like Dr. Ashford. When I first met him, he was doing singles ministries, and he was married. But the thing that was different about him is that he had been married and then he got divorced, and he was divorced for a significant period of time before he remarried. And he said himself, before he got divorced, he said, I used to say that same stuff to single people, because he'd been married when he was a young kid. You know, pray, and you need to just do this, and, you know, just silly stuff. And I'm not saying that obviously prayer is not silly, but what I'm just gonna pray all day and what I like, you know. And then also this whole idea of, you know, join singles groups, and most of those are women. And I have lots of women friends, and I love them, and they are my dopamine, you know, maintenance. You know, I love that. But a lot of times you get advice that is not practical for where you are, and it doesn't speak to your desire.
Right.
It tries to force you to be content, but it doesn't speak to your desire. And I'm not about that. I believe in being content and living with contentment and desire at the same time, and those are not mutually exclusive. So
Penny has a good question. You see that there? What are good ways married people can support singles or the ministry?
I would say one of the best ways, and I say this sometimes in when I preach on this, is don't tell us that God has a person waiting for us. Don't tell us that we are too picky. Don't tell us that we need to do this or we need to do that in order to get a man or a woman, depending on who you're talking to. Include us. You know, I preached at Meadowbridge a couple years ago, because Pastor Alex asked me to preach about being single. And I did. One of the things I said, and I actually preached this when I went to Georgia, because I preached for their divine worship, and then I did the seminar in the evening. I said that single people should be invited to holidays and Sabbath dinners and activities with families regularly. Like, if you want to be a married person or a family that supports single people, include them in your life. Because too often single women particularly are excluded from that, because a lot of women have issues and think you're trying to take their man or whatever. But I'm just like, there are children who need aunts and uncles that you could be. Of course, you want to vet people and what you don't want to expose your children to someone who may be, but pray about that. You know, most of us are okay, you know. So include us. To me, that's like one of the major things you can do. And I said to Meadowbridge, and it's kind of funny, I said, there are probably 5 people who've ever invited me to Sabbath dinner in this church, and everybody loves me. But I've been to Tracy's house, but she was already my friend. I didn't name the people, but you know, the people whose homes I'd been to were people that I was already friends with before I came to the church. And so how many Sabbaths did I go home and eat by myself? A lot. Now, sometimes I want to do that because I've been around people all week and I just want to kind of relax. But I spent many a Sabbaths by myself. I spent many. Tracy's pretty much the only one who invites me for holidays. You know, like those types of things. There are single people in your church who are crying out for just company, relationship. So that to me is one of the most important things. And I will tell you that after I preached that sermon, a lot of people came up to me and nobody invited me to dinner still.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Being single
and
comes
that's
with some
okay.
challenges.
Yeah. So those are real things that, people can do to help, you know,
Yeah.
support single people.
And this is exactly why I invited you to join me on this live. And I am actually glad the conversation, kind of went in this way because, we spoke about what exactly your hunger was, but we were able to see it, to witness it. You know what I mean? Your energy toward the thing that you are currently doing. So let's go ahead on and wrap it up. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So again, Lorraine, founder, director of A Single Mission, can I call it a company, an organization, a mission that does so much. You do the life and relationship coaching. You do the seminars at various churches, probably at anywhere, probably that anyone would invite you to do that,
Right.
Within reason where your spirit feels led to do just that. You also are preparing some online educational courses that will be coming soon. And I know those are going to be fantastic. It says on here also that you create a supportive, help churches and whatnot create a supportive and like-minded community to help them identify and live a God-given purpose. Is there anything else?
Coming.
Huh?
That's coming.
That's coming.
Yeah. Well, right now my focus is kind of the older, not old, but like 35 and older is is the people I'll be focusing on because there's a different level of need there. But hopefully as we kind of develop this and solidify it and kind of get that train rolling, we're going to do a branch that's for the 34 and younger, 21 to 34. And then we'll kind of move into the teens because I feel like there's so much information that if I had as a teenager and other people had as a teenager, that the trajectory of our relationships would have been so much different and healthier. And so my goal is to have segments and ministries and just kind of education that focuses on those different age groups over time.
Gotcha. Okay. So again, those are some things that A Single Mission is currently involved in and developing. I also I don't know how to do that whole pinning thing or whatever, but I also would direct people to your website, which is asinglemission.com, where they can read your the stories, the blogs that you have posted, which are asinglemission.com is where they can go to read your blogs, which cover an array of topics. They give great advice, great stories. They're extremely thought-provoking. And right when you think that it has just punched you and you alone in the throat, or has stepped on only your toes, you will see that Lorraine's toes have been stepped on as well. You know what I mean? You share the stories from, your own personal stories about some of the things that the challenges that you've had, and some of the transitional moments that you've had, in your thinking and in your, the way that you've carried yourself, in your singleness and stuff like that. So they're fantastic. I would encourage people to read those. And I will be honest, there are some that I need to catch up on, but all of the ones that I have read have been fantastic, and they are exactly what I would expect from you.
Well, thank you. We hope to come back with more. We've had kind of a gap trying to work on some of the business aspects of this, but we do hope to come back with that blog regularly in the very near future.
Yeah. So that's it. That with what we are doing, again, my name is Renee Warren. I am the founder of Prov 134 LLC, which is a company that originally started off simply as a t-shirt brand. But I don't want to have a t-shirt business. I too want to have a mission/ministry in getting God's word out there. And the first the t-shirt that came from that is the one that I'm wearing now. Lorraine is also wearing it, the Prov 134 Proverbs 13:4 t-shirt that states, or that says on it, a sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied, which means if you don't work, you don't eat. And this is where the whole hunger thing came from, because, where the origin of this hungry shirt, it was someone calling out for physical food. I realized that there are so many things that people find themselves hungry for, right? So this is what we're talking about. Lorraine had a moment in her life, or had, a calling on her life that led her to this moment where she pivoted. She took a turn in the direction toward that thing that her heart hungered for. So that's what this conversation is about. As far as like the hungry brand that I'm talking about, or that I'm developing, I describe it now as a little seedling. We're developing it. I'm trying to figure out exactly what direction I want it to go in. But this was step one. Again, I don't want a t-shirt business, but t-shirts are for sale on Etsy.com. Look up Prov134 Hungry. The shirts are on sale online. I don't want a t-shirt business. I want a mission. And as our first step, I am talking to folks, getting in your head, just trying to understand the thoughts and ideologies and the processes behind your hunger. And I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Lorraine. So I thank you for joining me and being my first live on Instagram. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies, for joining in, and gentlemen, for joining in and just taking a listen to this particular conversation. I hope that it has just been, I don't know, not only informational, but inspirational. Maybe it's a story, or there's something that has been said that you want to share with other people. Please do that. And that's what this is for. Again, our lives, the good, the bad, the struggles, the challenges, hardships, and all of the celebratory moments, they're not all for us, right? They're not all for us. Our lives are not about us, right? So that's all I have to say about that.